Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Here are the headlines. While countries around the world reconsider COVID rules for travelers coming from China, Australia says there will be no changes. Plus, the death toll rises following severe snowstorm in the United States. Welcome back to the world today. As COVID cases rise in China, even before the government announced the lifting of restrictions, authorities have disclosed more deaths and hospitals being overwhelmed. Although protests held in many countries against those COVID restrictions after 10 people died in an apartment fire in Urumqi, countries are still wary about allowing travelers from China into their countries. The United States is one of them. The government has announced it will impose mandatory COVID-19 tests on travelers coming from China. It mirrors the same decision by India, Italy, Japan, and Taiwan. From January 5th, all air passengers 2 years and older will require a negative result from a test no more than 2 days before departure from China, Hong Kong, or Macau. Federal authorities say passengers who test positive more than 10 days before a flight can provide documentation of recovery in lieu of a negative test result. They attributed the change in policy to the lack of information on variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and concerns that increased number of COVID cases in China could result in the development of new variants of the virus. The United States also is expanding its voluntary genomic sequencing program at airports, adding Seattle and Los Angeles to the program. That brings the total number of airports gathering information from positive tests to 7. Now, most countries except Australia will be changing travel rules because of China. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the country will be making no change to its rules, allowing travelers from China into the country. Australia and China recently resumed diplomatic dialogue after relations between the countries hit a low point following criticism of Australia of China's handling of COVID-19.
Well, we'll continue to monitor the circumstances that are occurring in China and in other parts of the world as well as we do. We'll take the appropriate advice from the health experts and follow that advice. There's no change in the travel advice at this point in time, but we're continuing to monitor the situation as we continue to monitor the impact of COVID here in Australia as well as around the world. Our priority is to keep Australians as safe as possible. Well, what we'll do is we'll take health advice, not just when it comes to China, when it comes to every country. There are outbreaks in various parts of the world. We'll follow the health advice. Of course, what is occurring in some parts of the world as well is that people have to get tested before they get on a plane as well. So there are various methods we'll examine.
We talked about the increase in COVID cases in China. This is coming this morning. The intensive care units of major hospitals of 2 cities of central China's Hubei province flooded with patients. A state broadcaster says medical workers in the cities of Wuhan and Yichang were tending to patients requiring oxygen masks and long scans as hospitals were forced to extend their capacity. Having imposed the world's strictest COVID regime of lockdowns and relentless testing for 3 years, China reversed course this month towards living with the virus, leaving its fragile health system overwhelmed. China officially reported 1 new COVID death for Wednesday, down from 3 on Tuesday, but foreign governments and many epidemiologists believe the numbers are much higher and that more than 1 million people may die next year. Let's bring in Chairman, Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19 here in Nigeria, Professor Yewale Tomori. Professor, thank you for joining me on the program today.
Thank you.
Why do you think that China is experiencing this surge in cases? I mean, they've had the strictest of COVID-19 restrictions for more than 2 years. So how come, the infection is still not being contained in the country?
You see, very, very important statement. China opted for zero COVID, whatever, which meant the disease was not spreading as it should spread, as it was spreading in other countries. But they stopped at that. They needed to have vaccinated their people their vaccination rate was, except for the elderly people, was, I think, who had full vaccination was less than 40%. In addition, they were using an inactivated vaccine, which is not as good or efficacious as the ones that others are using. So the combination of not vaccinating a large number of people also meant that the zero code meant that the virus was not spreading. You remember the number of cases they had compared to their population was probably one of the lowest in the world, which means the virus was not spreading as much as we. Now that works, is a time limited thing. So long as there's no other COVID cases in other parts of the world, you can within a short time keep that zero code. But then you need to do other things like what we're saying, vaccinate your people by not allowing the virus to spread. Very few will get infected. And so long as that period when other cases are not coming in, of course, when they relaxed all those rules, and they did this so suddenly, and after the protest, that's what you expect. A large number of people who have not been exposed to the disease are now being exposed, and that's what we're getting. And then again, remember, China keeps its numbers a little bit under their cloak, so we don't really know exactly what is happening. We think situations there are quite worse. Recently there was a report that one of the Italian airports, 50% of those who came in from China were actually positive when they were tested. So probably a major issue that is going on there.
Yeah, and I know lots of countries are worried about this. The number of people coming in from China, they're concerned about, China being transparent, with its COVID situation. I'm also thinking, that China may also be trying to maybe go back to those lockdowns, perhaps when people see the number of cases rising, when people see the situations in the hospitals. But other countries have opened their, also being wary, of what's going on in China. They're putting up the restrictions against travelers requiring more tests. So the US says 2 days before travel, and even if you've had COVID at least 10 days before travel, you need to attach, a documentation saying just that, along with your negative COVID test, and then presenting them to authorities at the airports. What do you make of this, though?
I think countries are protecting themselves. I mean, after being free for quite enough time, it will be unfair to let an influx of people. You remember when we all started, the first case in Nigeria was an imported case. So now that so many people from from China will be coming into different countries, their country has released they're issuing more passports. People can travel out they want to travel. So a lot of people from China will be traveling to other countries. And countries that have at least seem to have overcome the problem are now going to get an influx of people who are positive. We mentioned the issue of the Italian one, where 50% of the people on the plane were positive. So imagine if a large number of deluge comes into another country, you're actually creating problems for yourself. Particularly in many countries now, when people have even abandoned the vaccination, there's still a lot of people in many countries that are not yet vaccinated. So they are vulnerable people in those countries. And therefore, if China unleashes its own people coming into those and you don't check them at the border, then of course you are setting yourself up for a major disaster.
Yeah, but how will that work, though? Because many countries have lifted restrictions and are no longer requiring people to quarantine. So how will they deal with the influx?
Now, you see, the issue about disease control is a day-to-day thing. You don't decide last year and say no more. And then things are changing in other parts of the world, and you stick to your rules. You're constantly monitoring what is going on, just like I watched what the Australian people said. They're monitoring what is going on in everybody, not just for China, but for every country. And that's what your health authority should be doing. Our National Center for Disease Control, the steering committee for presidential, should be on the constant day monitoring, not just we did it last and then we forget about it until next Christmas before we start talking about it. It's a constant daily surveillance. What is happening there? Take the issue of variants. How many labs there are no longer functioning and they're not even checking on the kind of variants that are coming in? Those are the kind of things that we need to do. Everybody must be on the toes. The labs must be working. The borders must be working. And this is a time for us in Nigeria to go back and introduce those things based on prevailing circumstances. And say, now we're going to introduce the testing. If you don't get your test, you don't come in. If you're not vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and all those kind of rules and regulations which have been there before, we must continue to alter them based on the prevailing circumstances in the areas where we're not alone in the world. And therefore, we must take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, how that will work. The Nigerian government just announced, a few weeks ago, announced it will be lifting all COVID restrictions. So bringing that back might be a little difficult, how government works. But while it is certain, that people will be living with COVID, unfortunately, there's some who already are experiencing long COVID. And I think even here in Nigeria, some people are. Do we really have the medical capacity to deal with this?
Yeah, before I answer that question, the point you raised about being difficult to bring back we have no choice. Is that what we have to do to protect our people? The government should not be looking for popularity. It should be looking for the reality of saving our people. So if we need to go back, of course, if the circumstances around us say so, then we should go back to it, not waiting for a popularity contest of the government. Back to the issue of long COVID. We had a bit of problem even dealing with short COVID. I think now is the time for us to even begin to prepare. How many of our people do we know actually had the long COVID? Who is following up on all the cases that recovered from COVID? This is the time for us to get back a surveillance team, epidemiology team, go out there. Who are the people who have recovered from COVID? What's their situation? Are they improved? Are they other conditions? It's only when you have that information you can begin to plan for long COVID. So I think our first step is of the recovered, quite a small number, I don't know, 200, quite a large number that are recovered. Or those who recovered from COVID, what is their situation right now? We need that information. And it's only on that basis that we can then begin to act. And what are other people doing about their long COVID? Then we learn from other people's experience. But then we need to find out for ourselves, do we really have people who have long COVID in Nigeria? If we don't do that, we're not started.
Professor Yewale Tomori, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining me on the program.
Merry Christmas to you in advance, or in arrears.
Right.
A New Year in advance.
Exactly.
Have a great time.
Compliments of the season. Pardon my manners. Compliments of the season.
Yeah, bye-bye.
See you in the new year.
Same to you.
And there have been more deaths following the Arctic freeze in Northern America. At least 34 people have died in Erie County, which includes the city of Buffalo, according to County Executive Mark Poloncarz. Authorities are still trying to identify 3 of the victims. A storm that swept across the U.S. over the holiday weekend has killed at least 60 people in 8 states. There have now been more fatalities in Erie County in the last few days. During the infamous Buffalo blizzard of 1977, 29 people died in that storm. But conditions in some of the hardest hit regions in the U.S., including in New York, are starting to improve. Fewer than 1,000 households in Erie County are now without power. 95% of residents should have power restored by the end of the day, according to the county executive. But the city of Buffalo itself, which got more than 4 feet of snow, has made progress clearing roads. According to county officials, 65% of city streets have at least 1 lane available for passage, though a driving ban remains in effect due to dangerous conditions. The water distribution stations have been set up in Jackson, Mississippi to hand out bottled water to residents amid the water system crisis following the winter storm. And on Sunday, the Jackson government requested for local residents to boil tap water due to a drop in water pressure after frequent pipe bursts across the city. Maintenance crews have continued to perform reparations on damaged pipes, but the city is still experiencing severe water shortages. Volunteers and residents say that the government needs to step up its game. The population of Jackson, 150,000, is more than 80% black. It's long suffered from chronically poor water quality, and the supply of water to most of the city was shut down for several days in August when complications from floodwaters knocked the water treatment plant offline.
The citizens of Jackson, which are tax-paying citizens of Mississippi, need the state of Mississippi to step up its game and do what we need done here in the city of Jackson to assist with fixing the water sewer infrastructure. The water woes in Jackson, Mississippi, of course, we know that this has been going on for the last 40, 50 years, and now it has reached this peak where the infrastructure is crumbling. But however, the frozen pipes, it was all an act of God that cannot be avoided, or we can't blame the city of Jackson for what has happened through Mother Nature. But however, we are dealing with this process as we will have to continue to deal with this for the next few years until Jackson's water and sewer infrastructure is overhauled. So residents have been without water since we've gotten reports as of last Friday. But we actually did not hit the ground until on Sunday, Christmas Day, giving out water. So folks have been having access to this water, along with myself, since Sunday.
Well, actually, the water situation in Jackson has been, for decades, deteriorating. And it's just gotten worse. And it's associated more with the infrastructure than anything else.
It's affected me. I can't wash dishes. My sister lives in Florida. She has to come and bring me water so I can flush my toilet. I just had surgery and I had to take my medication and it's on my right foot. I got to get out to try to drive to get water. I am so upset with Jackson.
Wow, terrible conditions in Jackson. But it's also been a harrowing time for travelers at airports this period. Passengers queued at the Southwest Airlines baggage service office of Dallas at the Dallas Love Field Airport on Wednesday after the historic blizzard which provoked flight cancellations and turmoil across the U.S. U.S. Airlines had cancelled thousands of flights as a massive winter storm swept over much of the country before and during the Christmas holiday weekend. But Southwest woes have deepened while other airlines have largely recovered. Also on Wednesday, U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg ratcheted up pressure on Southwest Airlines, saying thousands more cancelled flights indicated a system failure at the low-cost carrier.
I was supposed to fly back on Monday the 26th. My flight was delayed 4 times and then it was canceled. I stood in line trying to rebook my flight. After a couple hours, I got to the desk and found out I couldn't get back to Dallas here, which is my home, until Thursday. I ended up canceling that flight. I was told my luggage would arrive on the next available flight that has been sent. But so far, no luggage.
Well, Southwest Airlines CEO Bob did apologize, for the cost of for what's been going on. Beg your pardon. Those who were trying to travel this weekend had many experiences to explain regarding not being able to get a flight out of the carrier, which typically has an aggressive schedule that connects vast swathes of the country. Has scrapped more than 12,000 flights since this storm started. It earns most of its profits from flying domestically and relies more on point-to-point service instead of operating out of large hubs, leaving staff vulnerable to being stranded during disruptions. The airline's CEO, Bob Jordan, as whom I was trying to remember just a minute ago, did release a statement on Tuesday saying he was truly sorry for those flight disruptions. Thousands of flights, as we said, have been cancelled as a result of the weather, which is still not clear. The Arctic blasts and a massive winter storm, dubbed the Elliott, swept over much of the United States during the Christmas holiday. More than 12,000 flights were cancelled. Other airlines also had to call off their flights, though on a much smaller scale. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, well, we haven't seen you all Christmas, so apparently either you were huddled under the snow somewhere or you got stuck at the airport, and I'm hoping it's neither. So how are you doing?
I am well. Yes, it's been a bit cold, but I have not stuck these type of that thing as well. So quite a time here in the U.S.
Yeah, and federal officials, I understand, are helping to clear roads. They're also going from door to check on people, make sure that people are okay, especially for those who live alone or those who are old and cannot help themselves. What else is going on to give us just a better understanding of the extent of the impact of the storm?
Well, right now, there's a lot of planning being done to ensure that we can get people back to some sort of normalcy after the new year. At this time, the focus is really on people staying in place This is a time of year the U.S. doesn't have an official holiday period where we're typically closed, but this is a time of year that most companies, most organizations are closed, and so it's a time where people are being asked to kind of stay close. Don't try to do too much while the officials try to get the roads cleared, while they try to ensure the infrastructure. We all know we've been talking for almost a year now about the infrastructure challenge the U.S. is being faced with now recently. And with these extreme weather conditions, it only makes the challenges that much worse. Trying to ensure that pipes don't bust, that we're able to secure and ensure water supply for individual homes. Because when you look at what's happening, especially in the Buffalo, New York area, and you see the areas that are near the Lake Erie region, those homes are completely covered with ice, some of them. And so it's a very dangerous time as well. So it's a time where officials are trying to allow those emergency response crews to not only get out to those individuals who might be stranded, but to also any type of life recovery that needs to happen and to clear the road so operations can come back in the new year.
Yeah, and there is also, a ban on those. There's a fine, I think, on those who go out, as government tells people to stay indoors. Is that still in force?
This morning, the that fine and that type of road closure was lifted. Early this morning, some of the major highways, the governor of New York lifted the 12 a.m. Thursday. Some of the streets in the local Buffalo area, the mayor lifted those restrictions as of 10 a.m. this morning, Eastern Standard Time. And so we are trying to move things back to some normalcy, but there still are winter advisories in place, asking individuals to not go out unless they absolutely have to.
And the weather is expected to clear up by the weekend, but people still need to be careful, right? In addition, there's no running water. I mean, we just saw the situation in Jackson, Mississippi, even though that's an ongoing problem. But no running water. People cannot go out. How are Americans coping with the grave weather conditions, though?
Americans are a little surprised, to be honest. It's a bit early for us to have these type of extreme conditions. And even if we were in the height of the winter season, 4 feet of snow, ice capped homes that could have over a foot of ice encapsulating them, that is not typical of the weather we see here in the US. And the homes are not really prepared to sustain that type of extreme weather condition. And so I think that where Americans are right now, they're just really trying to stay warm, trying to ensure that their homes are protected to the best of their ability so they can keep shelter. I mean, there are restaurants that have held up to 100 people and several different domestic animals while those individuals did not reach their home. So it's really a time of community coming together to try to ensure the safety and security of America.
So flights are being grounded. People can't go by road because of the snow and because of the slippery conditions of the roads. Can people travel by subway?
Well, it depends. Some of the subways are underground, but the major railways like the Amtrak, which is what would connect you throughout the northern region or anywhere across the U.S., if there are, that many of those are outdoor. So if there is major snowstorms, many of those railways are probably not cleared. But the underground subway systems that are pretty local, those potentially could be available if they are not having to reach stops that are outside of the tunnels and underground.
Maria, thanks again, and do stay warm and safe. Still terrible conditions out there. We'll reach out to you once again to give us an update if anything changes. Where the fiercest blizzard in 45 years hit Buffalo on Saturday, Craig Elston, the owner of C&C Cuts Barbershop in the city, opened his venue's door to those who were stranded in deadly conditions. People started turning up to take shelter from the storm on Christmas Eve. And by the evening, up to 40 people were in Elston's barbershop. He provided food, drinks, electricity to charge phones, places to sleep in, barber chairs, and a carpet in an unused storage room and coverings made from barber capes. The extreme weather was part of a wider winter storm. We've been talking about it all week. Front and the Arctic blast that drove freezing temperatures as far south as the Mexican border for days. Thanks for staying with us on The World Today. Catholic faithful are welcoming Pope Francis' invitation to pray after the worsening of former Pope Benedict The Benedict's health condition, former Pope, a hero to conservative Catholics, and who in 2013 became the first pontiff in 600 years to step down, is very sick. His successor, Pope Francis, mentioned on Wednesday, asking church members to pray for him. Bishops from Europe, the United States, and beyond urged the faithful to keep Pope Benedict in their thoughts after the Vatican followed Francis' announcement with a statement saying Benedict had suffered a sudden worsening of his health. A new Israeli government is set to be sworn in, the final stroke in Prime Minister-designate Benjamin Netanyahu's political comeback. Already dogged by criticism at home and abroad, the 73-year-old has had to calm concerns for the fate of civil liberties, diplomacy and clean governance since his bloc of nationalist and Jewish religious parties secured a parliamentary majority in a November 1 election. But Mr. Netanyahu is on trial for corruption charges, so he denies his alliance with the religious Zionism and Jewish power parties has stirred unease given their opposition to Palestinian statehood and some members' past agitation against Israel's justice system. Director of Political Reform Program at Israel's Democracy Institute, Asa Shapira, believes he will be a much weaker prime minister than in his terms as prime minister before. Or in Cambodia, where at least 19 people have been killed in a fire that swept through a hotel casino on the border with Thailand. Hundreds of people were in the Grand Diamond City building in the border town of Poi Phet when the fire broke out after 11:30 p.m. local time. The hotel casino employs 400 workers and had many Thai nationals as guests. Many of the victims are thought to have been trapped on upper floors, and a Thai volunteer organization said it was unlikely they could have survived. Rescue teams have struggled to reach people inside the building because of the dense smoke and are continuing the searches for those who are missing. Poi Phet is a key crossing between the two countries. It's also popular for its casinos, which many Thai nationalists or nationals visit because gambling is mostly illegal in Thailand. A large fire on a major South Korean expressway that spread quickly has killed at least 5 people and injured more than 3 dozen in heavy traffic before it was doused. A video provided by a local fire department showed soundproof awning engulfed in flames soon after the fire broke out on the second Gyeonggi Expressway near Seoul, the capital city, in the afternoon. Local media reports the fire appeared to have begun after a bus and a truck collided, but a fire official at the scene said the cause of the fire was still being investigated, although the fire had been put out. Excited residents in Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, formed long queues in the early hours of today, patiently waiting for their turn to catch a train ride on the city's first metro rail system. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina opened Line 6, the first metro line of the mass rapid system, which took approximately 6 years to complete, partially funded by Japan. The line is expected to transport some 60,000 passengers each hour in the densely populated city. According to the media, construction of the Line 6 project, which extends the line to Kamalapur from Motiji, cost nearly $3.3 billion. In 2017, when Bangladesh first made the announcement of the Metro Rail project, the cash-strapped South Asian nation said it aimed to build the system at a cost of $737.5 million. Entire network, which would encompass 6 lines and more than 100 stations, would help eradicate traffic jams in the congested city of more than 20 million people. While central China's city of Wuhan has extended its driverless taxi service hours, making the service available after dark. The city opened driverless taxi service in a designated area in its economic and technological development zone this August. Driverless taxis operated from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. local time until this week's extension changed from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Wuhan's driverless taxis currently operates in an area of 130 square kilometers with a population of 1 million. The city has been on the forefront of connected car applications and the commercialization of driverless vehicle technology, with over 400 kilometers of road opened to smart connected vehicle testing. We're looking forward to the new year, aren't we? Russian cosmonauts Sergei Prokopyev and Anna Kikinov, Dmitry Petelin are all decorating the International Space Station for the new year. I guess that's in case you're visiting. A Russian space agency released this video showing all three of them. It says that they were putting up decorations in space, similar to putting up New Year decorations back on, with exception for zero gravity. I guess they're having troubles doing that. Well, those who are in the spacecraft say that they've been there since September 21st, 2022. Earlier this month, Roscosmos confirmed that Soyuz MS-22 had a hole likely caused by the impact from a micrometeorite. This has caused the Soyuz capsule to heat, with the temperature aboard rising to plus 30 degrees Celsius, although the cosmonauts on the ISS were not in any danger. Roscosmos has advanced plans to potentially deploy a reserve spacecraft to ferry the cosmonauts back to Earth should the docked Soyuz MS-22 be found to be unusable. Well, I guess because it's space, they don't have much to do. Just put up the decorations and they go up. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.